And joining me in the studio today is Misha Vayman, who is our guest soloist for the El Paso Symphony Orchestra this evening. Welcome to El Paso.
Thank you so much.
Is this your first time here in El Paso?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I had to look this up because I remember last year we had a soloist by the name of Vayman, and I thought it cannot be a coincidence that we have two Vaymans in a row, two successive seasons. And I believe your mother is Anna Vayman, who was our soloist last season with the Shostakovich Violin Concerto.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah.
And this is kind of a long line of violinists in your family, I understand. You didn't just pick up a violin one day and said, I'm going to be a concert violinist. You have a lot of music running in your family. So tell us a little bit about your musical family history.
Yeah, if you can believe it, I'm actually fourth generation violinist. Yeah, my grandfather arguably being the most famous. He was a very successful artist in Soviet Russia, very well respected. And my mother came to the States as a student, studying with Isaac Stern, and going back and forth. She got a position in the Mariinsky orchestra under Valery Gergiev.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And now I'm here.
Did you feel a little bit of pressure when it came to playing the violin? Because obviously you have this violin history in your family. You didn't want to be a rebel and maybe play the viola or play the trumpet.
Well, I actually remember very well the moment when I was told to choose an instrument. It wasn't like, do you want to play an instrument? It's, which instrument do you want? And it was really between piano and violin. And I think the choice was still made for me in that department.
Did you ever play a little piano on the side?
A little bit of piano because my grandmother is a pianist. She worked with my grandfather, actually. They were one of the first Soviet artists to perform in Carnegie Hall, actually, so quite historic. My great aunt, also a pianist, and my great uncle, also a violinist. You understand?
Yeah.
So
any brothers or sisters who went off in another direction?
No
Really?
brothers or sisters.
How about other members of the family?
No, all musicians.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm,
Have you thought, like, if I ever grow up to have kids, are they going to end up playing?
Oh, they're gonna suffer.
Just like I
Just like I did.
So
Absolutely.
You're studying here in the United States. How long have you been here in the States now?
I've been here since the age of 6. Yes, you can say I'm native. I was actually born in the States, and then we went back to Russia until I was 6.
Nice.
And
where were you born?
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Very nice.
So very, very standard kind of Midwest America. My mom was assistant professor at CCM, the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music.
Mm-hmm.
I studied there with Kurt Salzman's. They had a program called Starling, much like taekwondo here, which I took part in.
Yeah, I saw the Facebook posts of you playing for the taekwondo kids. It's kind of nice, and I think it's really unique, if I can just sort of veer off with the taekwondo subject, that we are exposing children at that age, at least here in the West, to classical music, because normally music is exposed to children here when they're about 10 or 11, but we know that in other countries, children are exposed at a much younger age to classical. I mean, you started obviously very young, and many other soloists who have come through our hall have also began music very young, and they have very a rich musical youth history that they have behind them. And so if I can sort of get off topic a little bit, we were talking a little bit before the show about some of the music festivals and music competitions that you've been involved in. And you say that in Europe and in Russia that there is a really big youth culture around classical music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There are specialized music schools and the like where the kids go from a very young age, up to conservatory level. They just go through specially designed curriculums around music. But even people who are not musicians, and it's funny actually. I've noticed the demographic is either, I'd say, 18 to 25, maybe 30, and then there's a big gap until maybe 50 up. Perhaps because of just historically, of the politics that happened during the 90s, and that age group is kind of somehow whittled away. But these days, people my age, I see a lot of young faces in the crowd when I perform there.
I have seen a lot of young faces here in El Paso, and this so-called millennial generation. I think they're exposed to so much more varieties of music because of social media, because of YouTube. They can just click on anything and they're going to hear it, and they're just not as narrow-mindedly focused on one kind of music. Like you'll find in older people, I'm a country music fan, or I'm a rock and roll fan, or I'm a this fan or that fan, but you can't really ask a younger person what their favorite kind of music is. You'll literally ask anybody and they'll say, I like everything, or I like just about everything.
That's funny because that's my answer when people ask me what I listen to. I listen to everything. I listen to a little bit of everything. I always try to find something new. It's not cool to say I only like this one thing anymore.
Yeah.
You have to have a wide range.
So going back again to your studies, I understand you studied at Cleveland for a while?
Yeah, I went to the Cleveland Institute of Music. I studied with a great violinist, Joan Kwan, who studied at Indiana University with Joseph Gingold back in the day. And now I'm doing my master's at the Colburn Conservatory in Los Angeles with Martin Beaver, who is a former member of the Tokyo String Quartet, an award-winning group. And he, funnily enough, he also studied at IU with Joseph Gingold, and this was totally unplanned on my part. I only learned this later after he accepted me.
So you're a student, but you're also a concert violinist touring the world. Does that all count as part of your degree plan?
Well, thankfully, Colburn is very generous with. It's a very small school. First of all, it's 126 people, and they're specifically designed to let people work, and tour and take as much time as they need. They even generously pay for your flights to auditions or to performances if you can't find the funds to do it.
Well, I think that's one thing that's kind of interesting. A lot of people who I've talked to who have studied here in the United States, whether they're native to America or whether they come from other countries, there are some really terrific institutes of music here in the United States. And I think people normally think of, your European conservatories or your Eastern European conservatories. But the United States has some really terrific schools.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can list 5 off the top of my head. Juilliard, of course, the most famous one being Juilliard, probably. Yeah. The next one down the list is Curtis. They've been around for about 100 years, and they're very famous for doing something incredible, which is to give each student a full scholarship. Each student can live for free and studies for free. Of course, the competition to get in is very high. Colburn, actually, it's a new school, but with generous grants, they've been able to start doing the same thing. They built a new campus in 2003, and they give full rides and living and even food expenses. Really, you just live there for free.
At least you're not an NCAA athlete, because college athletes can't even take an apple. If you want to give somebody an apple, it's against the rules. We can't take that. So it's kind of nice that it doesn't apply so much for you guys.
It's very nice. Yeah, I feel they keep us busy, but I feel like I have a job, honestly, because I'm so well taken care of.
Well, it's kind of what are you going to do now? Once you get your master's, are you thinking of maybe becoming Dr. Vayman down the road, or what are your plans after you get your master's?
After I get my master's, I'll see if I can actually stay at Colburn to do an artist diploma, possibly, because I so enjoy studying with Martin Beaver. He's been a tremendous influence on me on this past semester that I just started. I feel like my level has shot through the roof. And yeah, it's just that's I think with the freedom that it would afford me, I could explore even more. I could do more competitions. I could do more touring rather than having to worry about expenses basically. That's what I want, just to avoid that for as long as possible. To
I think
focus
every
on
student is thinking about that.
To focus on my career for as long as possible. Yeah.
Do you ever think about maybe passing on some of the knowledge that you have to other students, like some of your mentors have? Maybe enroll or becoming a staff member or a faculty member at one of these universities or institutions.
Well, let me know if anything comes up. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to. I had a small private studio in Indiana last year. I took a year off to practice and to like I said, explore my options and to play around the world. So that was a first for me, maintaining a regular studio. Really interesting experience, and I hope to repeat it one day. I really enjoyed it.
So you're in your early 20s right now, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm 22.
So do you find when you are working with certain older conductors, perhaps in an orchestra, that they tend to sort of not respect you because of your talent and just look at you as you're just a young kid? You don't really know anything. Have you ever really come across that? Any sort of discrimination?
No, I think it's important to always go in with an open mind and to be respectful and friendly and open. Not push your agenda and try to convince them with the music rather than with the words.
Because I noticed that with your relationship right now with Maestro Ratai, you guys communicate so well together, and you can tell there's a mutual respect there between both
absolutely.
of you.
I mean, Boguslav is first of all a fantastic conductor. He's one of the best I've worked with. And, he really knows. He has a gift for working with soloists, for collaboration. Absolutely, it's so easy to work with him. He said the other day, when I asked him. I did something a little bit extreme, and I asked him if this was okay for the orchestra to follow, and he said, "Whatever your heart desires." And I almost shed a tear.
Yeah, I've noticed that he does have a very good relationship with pretty much every soloist that comes through, and we've had numerous conductors come by in the past, whether they're auditioning or there have been our longtime conductors, and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you can see, maybe it's not totally clear, but there's like an undercurrent of, you can just tell there's something that's not clicking between the both of them. But it's must be great to work with a conductor who you can communicate so freely with.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the violin concerto, the Bruch. It's gorgeous, and I'm sure that even if listeners who aren't familiar with the composer or the title of the piece, that they've probably heard it at some point because it is one of the most beautiful, most famous concertos out there. So give us a little bit of information about the Bruch concerto.
Sure. I mean, well, you just described it pretty well. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and people love it. Actually, it's funny. During Bruch's time, he was not very well respected by other composers because his music was immediately loved by audiences. So it was considered kind of, pop, not such serious music. Unfortunately, a lot of during his own lifetime, he was mainly considered, mainly famous for being a choral composer. But the most famous pieces that survived after his death are mainly for violin, works for violin. This violin concerto, he wrote three. Nobody knows.
Nobody knows the other two.
even like in my undergrad, whenever people would mention other violin, his other violin concertos, people go like, what? The Scottish Fantasy.
Yes.
And Balshem. Hebrew melodies.
So it's kind of like nobody's ever heard of the Saint-Saëns Concerto 2.
No.
Nobody's ever heard of,
No.
you can just
Paganini
name
2, 3, 4, and
or
5.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I understand he died broke, that he couldn't really sell this concerto. I was actually doing a little research.
Yeah. It's interesting. He tried to make a go of it in the States, but he sent his manuscripts along with some musicians. I forgot their name, but basically what they did is they sold the manuscripts for themselves and didn't give him a cent. And he couldn't do anything about it because back then, you go overseas, it's over.
Well, that's too bad. I had read also that he tried to just to make extra money to try to sell his autograph.
Yeah.
And try to even sell that in the States, and it just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it's really too bad. Yeah, he reached his peak in the 80s, but he died in I believe 1920. So yeah, by the end it wasn't too prosperous. Although he did write a lot of music. Even like a year before his death, he was very prolific.
Well, Misha Vayman, it's been great having you here in the studio. Appreciate you stopping by.
Great. Thank you so much.
And joining me in the studio today